Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are very excited to end the 2022 NICE Conference and Expo on an extremely high note. It is my honor to introduce the 15th Director of the U.S. National Science Foundation, Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Randy. Thank you so much. And it's a delight to be here. It's an unenviable job to be the last speaker and to even keep people, attending the conference still. I'm delighted that there are so many of you still here. And thrilled to be here with all of you because the topic of this meeting is something that NSF is heavily invested in. And I can tell you will be invested in even more into the future. So I wanted to take this opportunity to come and share what NSF is doing. Also talk about NSF as an agency and how we are moving forward. And what specifically have we been doing in the area of cybersecurity education, workforce development, and research. Since taking on this role 2 years ago, I have worked with our team at NSF, and most importantly, our partners across all the agencies, industry, and a whole lot more, because you will hear soon, I'm a huge believer in partnerships. And that's why I'm here, because this is about developing more partnerships. NSF cannot do its job effectively until all of us feel that we are part of the same team. And so here I am trying to build a team to become larger and scaled more and diverse and spread out all across the nation. And that's how we can get things done. But prior to coming to NSF, this is an area that we had been building in the institution that I came from. Arizona State University is the institution that I came from. And for the 20 years since I started as chair of computer science and engineering, and then evolved the new school of computing and informatics, and subsequently the vice president of research and the executive vice president of the university, all through you will see fingerprints of cybersecurity being built, because I strongly believe that this is something that is exceedingly vital. It was 20 years ago when I first launched the Information Assurance Center at that time, partnering with NSA. And then now, if you look at Arizona State and most other universities, you'll find this scaled in a very big way. And thanks in large part, not to NSF after I came, but the NSF before I came, and watched the tremendous commitment of NSF and the program officers and the visionaries at NSF prior to me, building amazing programs, which I'm going to talk about a few of them today in the interest of time. And I also want to reserve some time for your questions, so that if you have any specific questions, more importantly, advice and suggestions, I welcome them. So it's delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here and share some of those thoughts with you today. I was part of the National Science Board prior to taking my role, and therefore 6 years prior to taking on this role 2 years ago, I also had a chance to look at NSF from that perspective, from that perch, to know what NSF has been doing. So it's been something that I've always admired, and therefore it's only a pleasure to come here and share some of that with you here today. So let me dive into the presentation. So I thought I'll keep it more general and broad, if you may. Let's see if I can go back. Yeah. I thought I'll title it as more accelerating the future of not only cybersecurity, but as we all know, that computing and cybersecurity go hand in glove, and therefore we need to talk about both at the same time, because the context of computing is exceedingly vital. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that too as we walk through the presentation today. So before I dive into everything related to computing and cybersecurity, I just want to anchor all of you to the vision of NSF. Some of you may be very familiar with this, but every time I talk about this, I get enthused even more, and I'll tell you why. This vision of NSF was put together by none other than a brilliant mind who was responsible for the founding of NSF, none other than Dr. Vannevar Bush. In 1945, when we came out of World War II, Vannevar Bush said to then President Roosevelt that we need to make sure that the progress that we have made in science, technology, and engineering for the benefit of this situation at hand, namely war, how can we then use that moment and now deliver progress for humanity, society, and nations across the globe? And that fantastic treatment called Science, the Endless Frontier that he presented was truly a visionary document. 70 7 years later, it's still a document that we can look to and say, more work has to be done. Much has been accomplished, but more work has to be done. And in 1950, by an act of Congress, NSF was founded. So 72 years later, if you look at this vision that I'm going to present to you, you will find that that vision has stood the test of time and continues to propel NSF, as we are thinking about NSF, into the future. It has a very simple framing. I usually talk about this in these three parts. Promoting the progress of science, of course. And science in the broadest term, not just science, engineering, technology, and a whole lot more, and also science in its broadest form of how we think about science. Not just physical sciences only, but even social, behavioral, economic sciences, and a whole lot more. And then the purpose of that being, how do we advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare? And most importantly, how do we secure the national defense, which is, very much apt for the discussion that we are having today. And the last 2 days, you've all I looked at the agenda, a very robust set of discussions and panels and so on. So this vision, therefore, as you can see, doesn't have to be tinkered with. Most vision statements get revisited every few years to see what we can do to contextualize it. This vision doesn't need that. It still holds true. And so, but then, when I came into the agency, I looked at this moment in time, something unique about this moment. Like what happened in 1945, I believe, we can talk about COVID as that, which is energizing us to think about how do we deliver outcomes at speed and scale. And I'm going to come to that point in a minute. But even more than that, I have found that this special moment that we are in today is characterized by three important things. The first thing is the global competition. We are seeing global competition like we have never seen before. And oftentimes, people will look at global competition and say, how might we make sure that we are taking a defensive posture? Nothing wrong with that. But I've always maintained that defense is not a strategy. Offense is strategy. If you look at what we do in football or basketball or in anything that you do. And to me, the competition is not about the competitor, it's about us. And so I keep reinforcing this wherever I go. At NSF, in whatever forums that I am in, I keep reminding people, competition has always made me better than I could have ever been. It's about us. It's about how we can be even more excellent, how we can be more innovative, how we can inspire ourselves more through the moment of competition. So this moment of global competition, therefore, is motivating us, is inspiring us, and is ensuring that we are strengthening at speed and scale. This is a term that I use quite a bit. I just made it up. Strengthening at speed and scale. That's what this moment demands from all of us. But then this moment is also characterized by one more thing. Before I leave that slide, it is characterized by one more thing, and we'll come to that in a minute. If you could leave up the slide, please. Yes. The second thing that I have noticed in this moment is that for far too long, we have left, and this is very apt to the discussion that we're having in this meeting. For far too long as a nation, we have left a lot of good ideas and talent behind. All across the broad geography of the nation, across the socioeconomic demographic of the nation, across the rich racial diversity of the nation. You pick whatever slice you want to pick, rural, urban, socioeconomic demographic, racial diversity. It doesn't matter what slice you pick. We all know that a lot of talent and ideas are being left behind. I call them the domestic talent. And again, in the interest of coining a term that sticks with people, I call them the missing millions. The missing millions of talent, domestic talent, that have been left behind. This cannot, must not, and should not continue anymore. We have to address this. And that includes the talent and ideas in the realm of cybersecurity. And therefore, this moment, is challenging us, again, inspiring us, motivating us to do better, stronger, faster, strengthening at speed and scale to deliver such that we can include all the talent and ideas from all across the nation to contribute to the national prosperity and welfare. When I say this, people will tell me, but what about global talent? I said, absolutely. I'm a global talent, and I'm standing in front of you. This nation gave me an unbelievable opportunities for which I'm eternally grateful, and that's why I'm doing the job that I'm doing today, to serve, to give back, to do everything that I can. So the global talent for far too long has been substitutive to domestic talent. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for not any longer should we have global talent substituting for domestic talent. That global talent should instead be additive to domestic talent and augmentative to domestic talent, that we unleash domestic talent and welcome global talent like no tomorrow, both at the same time, because that's what this moment demands, so that we might address the first thing that I talked about. How do we address this global competition moment at this time and deliver the outcomes that is required of us? So we need both domestic and global talent at the same time in full force and full scale, to be very clear about that. But then I will tell you one more thing that sometimes surprises people. As I said, I was appointed by President Obama to the National Science Board, by President Trump to the NSF director. I was confirmed unanimously by all the 100 senators said yes. Apparently a rare thing that happens. But what it tells you is one thing. It tells you one thing, and I can assure you this. I talked to senators, House members on both sides of the aisle. We have strong bipartisan support for science, technology, engineering, for what it is doing, what it can do for the nation into the future. I can assure you that, because I have personal conversations with all of them, so I can tell you with first-hand experience. So take it from me. If you have any doubts about that, just drop it. So this moment, therefore, is unique. The global competition is inspiring and motivating us. The missing millions that cannot exist anymore, we have to address that. And the fact that we have bipartisan support to be able to deliver all these outcomes. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there may be questions about this or that. And we can have real arguments about them, and I do. But let's not get pessimistic, because this moment cannot have pessimism as anything that any one of us should possess, because we are the change makers. We are the people that are going to get it done, and therefore we cannot be pessimistic. The Science magazine, when I took this job, wrote an article. The first article, they said, I'm an optimist, and I said, I will take that accusation. So we defined at NSF a vision that builds and scales on the fantastic outline that Vannevar Bush laid out for us. Simple 3 pillars. The first one, advancing the frontiers of research into the future. Nothing new about that. You would expect that NSF will do that, isn't it? Nothing new. But again, this moment strengthening its speed and scale. That's what makes it different. So NSF, if you didn't know already, has been responsible for over 260 Nobel laureates who were funded by NSF. I just came out of a meeting in Panama and I was chairing the Global Research Council meeting there. And I tell you, every agency leader all across the globe would love to have what NSF has to celebrate in terms of the outcome. Just on that one, let's say, Nobel laureates. That's not it only. There are many, many things to celebrate. I'll give you 2 more examples, if that's help you set context. 2 graduate students in 1994 wrote a proposal to NSF called a Digital Libraries Initiative. Their names were Larry Page and Sergey Brin. NSF funded that project. 4 years later, they submitted a report, the final report for the project, in which they said, we are founding a company called Google, and the rest is history. Likewise, Qualcomm was an SBIR project funded by NSF in the 80s. When Viterbi came and said, I've got this fantastic idea, I want to build a company around that, now it's several billions, hundreds of billions of dollars scale company. So NSF does not only unleash fantastic innovative ideas and fundamental discoveries, it also unleashes innovations that translates into unbelievable outcomes. Not much is known about that sometimes, and so I'm starting to talk about it a lot. And you're going to hear a lot of that today, so I'm warning you. The central pillar of the vision is precisely related to what I talked about. How do we ensure that we have accessibility and inclusivity as part of the thinking of the future of how we are going to build science, technology, engineering, prosperity into the future? So I won't say any more because we have talked about the missing millions as an example of that. But it's not just that. How do we build regional innovation everywhere across the nation? Third pillar, securing global leadership. I often talk to my counterparts, as I said, I was just in Panama City last week, and there I was saying to our global partners, it's not about one nation being a leader and other being followers. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is nations which have core values that we are synchronized in: openness, transparency, reciprocity, research integrity, and respect for intellectual property, and a whole lot of more. If we can align in our foundational values, like-minded partners should share in global leadership so that we might advance fast. Addressing problems such as cybersecurity requires our partners to work with us, like-minded partners to work with us, and I talked to a lot of them. I was in London just 3 weeks ago, meeting with the Minister of Science and Technology, George Freeman, and the advisor to the Prime Minister, science advisor to the Prime Minister. And the conversation is how we can triple, quadruple, quintuple our scale of partnerships so that we might deliver together as nations that believe that this is something that's important, that we believe in the democratic principles, but also in advancements of our own citizenry, but at the same time working on global grand challenges together, wired together. So that's what I mean by securing global leadership. But in all of these pillars, one of the things that I've emphasized from the date that we arrived at NSF is the following. We will do this by hyper-partnering in every possible way. You're going to see this relevant again to cybersecurity because we cannot deliver the outcomes of secure cyberspaces without strong partnership across disciplines. And therefore, it starts right at NSF. I keep reminding my folks. It starts right at NSF. How can directorates at NSF work together, hyper-partner together in terms of problems such as cybersecurity and others, but also working in partnership with every agency across the nation, whether it is the Department of Energy, Department of Commerce. We're just having a conversation with Rodney just before I got in here, how we partner with every one of those agencies. And they, in turn, are very interested in partnering with us, too. So we cannot deliver the outcomes without such rich partnerships. And then, in the COVID days, it was easy to swing my chair from the left to the right and go from California to Maine and talk to CEOs of companies without having to get on a plane and come here like travel. So I could probably do 6 times more meetings than I would have done, and therefore able to get industry partners, regional innovation systems, entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems, all of them partnering, because we need everything and international partnerships so that we might be able to strengthen at speed and scale. So that's where NSF is heading, with the mindset of innovation. So when I came to NSF, therefore, to articulate the previous point again, that NSF is often thought of us on the left-hand side. NSF is a great agency for curiosity-driven, discovery-based exploratory research. So I've tried to sort of not only augment that, but also demystify in a particular way that it's not just that. It's also about the right-hand side. NSF also makes possible rich, use-inspired, solutions-focused innovations or translations. And therefore, the best way of describing that, again, I made it up, is the DNA of NSF is made up of 2 strands. The left strand and the right strand, but they are not independent of one another. They are not like you do this basic research, then applied research, then you have translational research. It doesn't work that way. These 2 are highly symbiotic. Explorations result in innovations and translations. So does innovation and translations result in additional explorations. I have thousands of examples that we have created. It doesn't matter whether this fantastic discovery that we talked about just last week at the National Press Club in terms of the black hole image that you saw in our own galaxy. It can be even that. Or it can be a fantastic translational discovery, like something in advanced manufacturing. It doesn't matter what it is. They all mutually synergize each other, and one results in the other. And that continues to be the way that we build the future. And therefore, this is the DNA of NSF. Now let's articulate the DNA even in the simple context that we are working on, namely computing. NSF, long time ago, talking about workforce, as you all know, has invested for several decades in computing. Let's look at even computing in terms of education that we are all discussing here today, and cyber being a component of that. In the 1970s, NSF invested in the Logo programming language for kids, 1970s. And then in the 1980s, we started to look at how we might get Logo and Lego to work together in unleashing the robotic kits that excites kids, that inspires kids to want to get excited about coding and computing and so on. And Mitch Resnick at MIT and others then took the challenge and worked on further building very innovative NSF ITR program unleashed in the 2000s, this amazing conceptualization of Scratch as a programming language for kids. And that Scratch then further made possible Scratch Junior, which is used as a coding methodology for teaching computing for kids in schools. And then the companion of Scratch being Snap, which is used as a mechanism of how high school and early college course teaching can be done through Snap. So Scratch Junior and Snap evolved from the investments that NSF made very early on, starting in the 70s. So it didn't just appear just like that. And that led to something even more, namely how do we get computer science now penetrating all aspects. And therefore, in order to do that, you need to have AP courses designed with computer science, advanced principles course that was launched, CS, AP courses. And I will tell you stories on that too as we come to the future slides. So that birthed, and now we are looking at how that unleashes then unbelievable broadening participation in STEM. And you ask, okay, that's fine. What does the data show for in these kinds of things? And we'll talk about that in a moment. But before we get to that, as we talk about what computing investments do, let's take another example. The buzzword AI that proliferates everything that we discussed today. And if you look at the investments and the impacts, and look at the generations of investments and impacts, as you know, AI didn't just appear today. It was several decades of investments of NSF and other agencies to advance the fundamental notions of AI. And AI, as they say, has had multiple rebirths. In the 70s, NSF invested heavily in machine learning. Several of those have become outcomes in so many forms, but even just take one example of this company called Deep Scale Vision System. In 2019 was acquired by Tesla for automatic driving cars. That came about because of the fundamental investments that were made, and one form of that manifestation of that set of investments into concrete outcomes is this deep scale vision system as one example. Likewise, in the 70s, significant investments in natural language processing. I mean, you see all the websites, the apps, they all use this fundamental concept of bag of words algorithms in terms of natural language processing and speech recognition, or whether it is in terms of any other form of those kinds of natural language processing based applications. They are all anchored in the fundamental investments that was made in the 1970s by NSF. I've started to tell these stories a lot because people don't get to understand the linkages. So I tell people that I'm just a storyteller, that's all. People do the work. So therefore, if you look at the other significant investment that NSF made was in Bayesian networks. And Bayesian networks are part of everything and anything that you can think about. If you drove in today and you put on your GPS navigation systems, Bayesian networks was at work. If you are in a clinical decision-making environment, again, Bayesian networks is a mechanism by which they work. So all of that investments of NSF do translate into tangible outcomes, directly and indirectly. Intelligent tutoring systems. In fact, NSF funded AI institutes, several of them in the last 2 years. When I came into NSF, I said that AI institutes cannot be just AI institutes. We renamed the nomenclature as AI in every state. I said AI has to be inspiring in every state of this nation, every part of this nation. That doesn't mean that AI research will be everywhere right away. It can be a K-12 inspiration. It can be a community college inspiration. It can be an entrepreneurial inspiration. It can be, of course, a research inspiration and more, but it has to be everywhere. In the first cycle of 7 AI institutes that we launched, 5 of them funded by NSF, each $20 million scale. 2 of them were augmented by none other than USDA NIFA. Go figure that out. That's the kind of partnerships I talk about. Transformational partnerships. Not only partnerships that you can automatically understand. 7 institutes that span 20 states of our nation. The next iteration challenged us even more. 11 institutes that we launched, again, 5 funded by NSF, the other 7 through partnerships. One of them, in fact, an industry partnership together for $20 million. Amazon, Google, Accenture, and Intel coming together at $20 million. Department of Transportation. And the third cycle, we're going to have NOAA and others participating too. Again, NIFA funded 2 more. In defining the future of agriculture through AI. So with 11 plus 7, 18 institutes in the 2 iterations that we have launched so far, we cover 40 states and the District of Columbia. And now we are in the 3rd phase of the AI institutes. And I'm confident that we would have linkages, not by diluting any standards of merit review, but by intentionally making sure that we partner with entities that truly deserve to be included in this fantastic revolution of AI institutes. So this is an example. I'm just giving you quick thumbnail examples of the transformational way in which we think at NSF of how to deliver the outcomes that I speak about. So Intelligent Tutoring Systems is one of the AI institutes funded with the University of Colorado Boulder, for example. Human and robot teaming AI tutoring systems. That was one of those AI institutes that we funded in the first iteration. So in the 90s, we invested not just only in technology-based only. We all know that there's no technology without bringing together all of the component parts, and we are seeing it in real time with COVID. Social behavioral economic science is very, very important for cybersecurity. So if you look at this investment that we made here in terms of what we did in social behavioral economic sciences, in terms of understanding emotions through facial features, that then led to a startup called MoEmotion startup, which again got in 2012 acquired by Apple, used in many, many situations, as you can imagine. So this is the kind of work that NSF does, investment to impact, investment to impact. So let's talk about, you're all saying, okay, he spent so much time, what is he doing in cybersecurity? And so let's see how far we are here. Okay, we're almost, halfway here. So we'll try to see what we can talk about in cybersecurity. So if you look at the investments in computing and cybersecurity, you can categorize them in 3 major buckets based on the focus areas that we said that we will emphasize at NSF. How do we strengthen discovery and innovation? How do we inspire missing millions? How do we design for the future? So if you look at strengthening discovery and innovation investments of NSF related to cybersecurity, let's take some examples. We're not going to exhaustively discuss everything, but we're going to take some exemplar and examples that drives home the point, particularly related to the discussion that you're having here, which is about education, research, and workforce. The SATC program, we celebrated the 10th year of the SATC program. Secure and trustworthy cyberspace. That's the acronym SATC, if you're wondering what it is. Secure and trustworthy cyberspace. SATC, 10 years. This year alone, we funded $80 million for enhancing cybersecurity research and education projects. Many, many examples of those investments that I can talk about, but I'll just take one example. University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, UMBC. At UMBC, one of the SATC projects is focused on how do we determine deepfakes, which is a huge challenge, as we all know, in every sphere of what we are doing. How do we analyze images and voice data to be able to understand true representations versus fake representations, as one example. So these are the kinds of advancement of ideas that SATC program makes possible. So I would strongly encourage you to check this out. But we're going to come and talk about the manifestation of that in terms of education in a few moments. AI institutes. I talked about the unleashing of the 18 AI institutes so far. One of those AI institutes, I was just there not too long ago at Ohio State University, is focused on AI institute called EDGE. EDGE Institute. And EDGE Institute is focused on investments to advance wireless edge activities in partnership with 3 DoD labs, 30 researchers from 11 institutions, advancing robust, efficient, and most importantly, secure communications. That AI Institute is focused on that particular area, which is related to what we are all talking about in this room here. CIF Fellows. This is Computing Innovation Fellows. When COVID hit, I challenged our team even more. I said we cannot have any talent or idea left behind because they have had personal challenges or institutional challenges because of COVID, this moment. So we challenged ourselves. I said, however difficult it might seem, we have an $8.8 billion budget, in case you didn't know, at NSF. Seems large. But I challenged ourselves to make sure that we are going to, however difficult it is, carve out 5% of the budget to help disproportionately affected individuals and disproportionately affected institutions because of COVID, to ensure that science and scientific ideas will not be slowed down. And particularly students at transition points, undergraduate, graduate, whatever that might be, that they shall not be slowed down, and researchers at the beginning of their career. So we took a sort of a significant step, and thanks to Congress and the administration, to the ARP, we got a $600 million augmentation. So we launched $1 billion between that and the 5%, $1 billion to address the immediate need, the COVID moment at hand, to see how science cannot be slowed. So NSF is always looking to opportunities to see how we can configure ourselves, reconfigure ourselves, be innovative, so that we might deliver for the moment. There are many, many examples of projects. I won't even get there. We launched 1,000 projects, over 1,000 projects, through a mechanism called rapid grants, not waiting for months for the reviews to happen, but weeks, to get the money out so that people can actually translate their ideas into action. Many examples of projects. I won't have time to discuss them. But if you want one example, ask me a question. I'm just planting my questions too. So through the CIF Fellows Program, this is a bridge program. How do we get computing doctoral students who are about to finish but may not get their jobs because of the COVID moment? How might we help them? So the CIF Fellows Program launched 69 fellows. More than half of them, I think 53%, if I remember the number correctly, of them were women. Over 23% of them were underrepresented minorities, 17% of people with disabilities. So this program, as you can see, I'm a computer scientist, I'm a number geek. You're all wondering, how does he remember all these numbers? So this is the kind of impact that we have, is the moment at hand should be addressed, because we didn't want anything slowed down in cybersecurity work, for example. And then quantum computing and information science faculty fellows program. 3-year investment in these fellows, startup faculty, so that we might inspire more quantum computing thinking and quantum information science thinking in all the institutions across the nation. These are but some examples of the kind of things that we are doing. As you know, there's a tight connection between quantum and what we do in the cyberspace. We all know that. I was just at IBM Yorktown Heights 3 weeks ago doing the Hudson lecture, and I saw the quantum computer that they have with 127-qubit computer. It's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal, the work that it's doing. So scaling the cybersecurity research and education, when we talk about actually delivering across the nation, here is an example. CyberCore program is cyber scholarships for service. That is, these students who will then, after receiving the scholarship, will actually serve in federal agencies, in local agencies, in tribal context and so on, tribal government context and so on, so that they're committing to serve, and therefore they're getting the scholarships to educate themselves with cyber. CyberCore program is something that I am personally excited by, because it's an amazing program. And we're trying to scale that more and more and more with investments. Right now it's encompassing 37 states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, in terms of its reach. But we want that again to ensure that we are not leaving out any talent anywhere. So this CyberCore program, and then the many programs that sort of support the advancement of cyber thinking at K-12 level. GenCyber, for example. GenCyber is a partnership with NSA, that NSF, working with NSA, is investing in terms of how do we get K-12 kids the cyber training for K-12. The STARS, the Cyber Kid STARS program, right? So that's something that we're very proud of, because we need that sensitization right at the level of K-12, we'll all agree, so that we might then generate this unbelievable pipelines. We all know that cyber talent, you're all here because of that. How do we scale cyber talent at speed? That's why we're all here talking about it. How might we do that? And this is not just NSF. I just want to be very careful. That's why I'm constantly invoking partnerships. Nothing happens without strong partnerships and co-investments. Now, Rodney knows this. With the NIST, we work very closely on so many fronts, And so the Department of Homeland Security, so with DoD, Department of Energy, and a whole lot more. Industry, of course. CS for All, I promise that I'll come back to it. I have not forgotten. The CS for All program was launched so that we might have diversity in computing everywhere, all the way from K to 12 to community college and so on. So we invested heavily in terms of professional development for teachers who are training the kids in computing. So what is the data to show for? Let me give you a data point. Between 2016 and 2019, we have tripled the number of students who have enrolled for AP Computer Science Principles courses, both in all women, black, Hispanic, all of them tripled. Let me give you data on women. Between 2017 and 2020, right now we have 40,000 women in 2020 who took the AP Computer Science Principles course. It was 17 a couple of years ago, 17,000. I'm very proud because these are the ways in which we need to move. When you talk about scale, we have to deliver at scale, not just a few thousand here and there, a few hundreds here and there, but really at scale. But that's not enough. This is just a beginning. I'm telling you, we have to do hundreds of thousands and millions in order to get to the numbers that we want to really get to. So what else do we have there in that chart? Okay. I promise that I will get back to cyber and secure and trustworthy cyberspace. We've got a education program, a SATC EDU program, again focused on children, again focused on K-12 education. How might we launch programs that ensures the training, the curriculum development, and the training for K-12 teachers? And we have the NSF Seed Lab, through which we have over 1,000 institutions connected, over 700 teachers, 900 teachers trained by that process, SATC EDU program, for example. Likewise, the National Cyber Training and Education Program, NSITE. Again, another way in which we are trying to train more through the ATE program, which is focused on community colleges. How can we get more community college talent for technicians, which industry needs a lot of? Technical skills being trained in partnership with community colleges. So we are constantly looking at how we might invest more in terms of expanding these activities at NSF. Again, back to the cyber core program. Just this year in January, we invested $29 million to expand the program, with 8 more new universities added to the network. They are in contact with colleges and communities, and that augments already the 82 that we are already funding to a total of 90 universities being funded. So how do we branch out more and more and more all across the nation to build the cyber core program? So as we are thinking about designing for the future at NSF, when I came to NSF, I said we need to launch a new directorate that translates the ideas, fantastic ideas that comes about from the vertical directorates, whether it is computing, information sciences, and engineering, whether it is engineering or biosciences, geosciences, mathematical, physical sciences, social behavioral economic sciences, or the education human resources now called the STEM EDU directorate. How do we translate all of them even more at speed and scale? So we launched the new directorate called Technology Innovation Partnerships as a cross-cutting directorate. And this is the first new directorate in 31 years at NSF. When I came in, I said we need this launched within a year, and it is done. We launched this at the Austin. Why am I drawing a blank? Sorry? South by Southwest, yeah. I'm doing so many events, so South by Southwest, we launched it. And then through that, what are we doing? We are bringing together all the activities of NSF already in this area of translation, but more importantly, augmenting them, scaling them, and also introducing new programs. I'm going to talk a few programs because these are relevant, again, to what partnerships we might have between research, education, translation, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. How do we accelerate public-private partnerships? We have talked about that. We're going to invest heavily in this. And there are many, many examples just in the last 2 years. If you take the RINGS program, Next Generation Networks, If you look at the program, it's a partnership with many, many companies investing heavily. And the companies are investing hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in these partnerships, pre-wiring them so that we might be able to scale, not just only with federal investment, but what private sector investment is also doing in order to move these things fast. In entrepreneurship, you have heard of the I-Core program. I-Core program is done pretty good. I see many success stories of I-Core programs whenever I go around the country. People tell me what they have done. But we need to expand and scale that, but also augment that with PhD fellowships on entrepreneurship, where they have immersive experiences with entrepreneurial environments, a lot more than what I-Core does. I-Core sensitizes to see how we can get that even more. So we are launching Pathways to Entrepreneurship programs, several of them. Lab to Market programs, SBAR, STTR, and a whole host of other programs, Partnership for Innovation, etc., which is translating fast the ideas, but we're going to see how we can scale even more. All the best with your trip. And then translational accelerators, which is how do we take those ideas that NSF then invests and then incubates companies or the small business innovation companies, how do we partner with commerce to see how that can be scaled? But the most important thing that we launched 2 weeks ago, check this out, regional innovation engines. How can we have Bell Lab-like innovation entities everywhere across the nation through public-private partnerships, contextualized to the particular challenges that region faces or the opportunities that the region presents? For example, where can we have the next gen of agriculture? Then in the crucible of innovation of agriculture, a live-in laboratory in the states of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Indiana, Illinois as one example. There are other examples of that kind of an agricultural innovation that can happen across the nation. How might we build intentional, innovative activities around these kinds of place-based innovation? How do we bring regional innovation and make it happen all across the nation, in addition to enriching the innovation ecosystems in California, in Boston, and in Austin, and so on, but see how we can scale that even more. And so we are intentionally investing in those kinds of ideas by seeing how we can get more resources to be able to invest more. And therefore, for me, cyber is a huge part of the focus of this regional innovation ecosystem idea all across the nation. What might we do to bring together some of you who may have the assets of education, the K-12, universities, industry, entrepreneurial ecosystems, city, state, how we might all pull together and come together to build these unbelievable innovation ecosystems all across the nation. How do we accelerate translations that way? As I said, this is truly a partnership of industry, communities, universities, of course, and local governments, and more. All of them working together. And there are many examples of this. I mean, we launched a couple of programs that might be of interest to you. Community College Innovation Challenge Program, Civic Innovation Challenge Program, all of this in the last 2 years. Civic Innovation Challenge is where the community presents the challenge and academia comes and works with them, rather than academia presenting the challenges and bringing in the community. Flip the equation so that we can do better to serve the community-oriented problems also. And remember, when I do all of these things, I say all of these things, people will say, oh, but that takes away from basic research. Not at all. It's a contrary. It's just how do we enhance even more basic research to the DNA model that we talk about. And at NSF, when we are designing for the future, therefore, we need to think about this, therefore, in a transformational, disruptive, innovation way. So that instead of looking at the individual directorates as pillars, you look at them as fused entities. So they all work together with the cross-cutting directorates of technology innovation partnerships, Office of Integrative Activities, Office of International Science and Engineering, ensuring that we are leveraging and energizing activities in these fused entities more and more and more. The problem of climate change or cybersecurity cannot be solved, as we all know, by only the science, the math, the physics, the chemistry, engineering, computing, social behavioral economic sciences. It requires all of this and more in order for us to be able to really solve those problems innovatively. So that's the thinking of how we take NSF and look at NSF into the future. So I hope that this gives you a glimpse of what we are doing at NSF. And I wanted to reserve 15 minutes for Q&A. So I was trying to accelerate here. So I hope it gives you a flavor of the kinds of work that we're doing in the cyberspace. There's a lot more. And this 1 hour or 45 minutes will not do justice for exposing all the programs and the investments that we do. But please check out our website. And if you have any specific questions, send an email to me, and we'll make sure that we address any questions that you may have. More importantly, if you have solutions and suggestions, we welcome that, because you are the place where the creative, innovative ideas happen. And when I come to these forums, what I always invite is partnerships, your ideas, your suggestions. How can we make NSF better? How can we serve you all better at NSF? That's a mindset with which we come here. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Randy. Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions that you want?
Do we have any questions for the director? We have the mics inside. I see people.
I used to tell my students in my class when they had no questions.
Sir, if you can go over to that.
There's a question that's coming up. When people didn't have questions in my classes, I used to tell them there are two interpretations when you don't have a question. One interpretation is, everything is so well understood, there are no questions.
So,
the other interpretation is nothing is understood, why bother?
So, sir,
and I say that if I don't have any questions, I'll assume the former.
So, sir, if you could please identify
yourself. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. This is Ram Dantu from University of North Texas.
Very good. Denton.
Punch gave a very, very visionary goal for the whole country, not just one state or anything. This is great talk. I really enjoyed every piece of it. And one question I have, Punch, before that, Punch father was my teacher. So I can actually see how he actually grew his child and to the visionary of the whole country. I'm really proud of that. And my question to Punch right now is, in cybersecurity, one of the main problems is that most of the information, what is happening, is with the private industry, not with the actual federal agencies. It's maybe 10%, maybe 15%, maybe. But 80% of it actually with the private. And they cannot or they don't want to share the information, what is happening. So we have to have some creative ideas of how both of them can share each other, and that's the only way we can solve these existing cybersecurity problems. So I just want to give my thoughts towards that. If there's anything that NSF can do, that will be great, and the creativity in this area.
Ram, that's an excellent point. So when I talked about regional innovation engines, I wanted that to essentially exemplify what you're talking about, where we create a safe space, no pun intended, safe space for university, industry, entrepreneurs, community to sit together, and not in a university laboratory, intentionally something that where people sit together, and we have to help them sort out the IP issues, we have to help them trust issues, and open access issues. So we have to sort all of that out. So we are thinking about these regional innovation engines as models of how we might bring, I cannot agree with you more, how do we bring practitioners and industry researchers to inspire not only new ideas, but even more importantly, that the talent that we are generating in the cyberspace has to be influenced and inspired by the researcher practitioner from industry, so that we can get the best talent trained. Because just relying on only academic-based training may not get the full talent. You have to almost retrain them or train them more. So there's no time for that. So you need to get this talent out ready to deploy. So this partnership mindset is what we're introducing more and more. So NSF will be investing more on this partnerships. You will see that.
Yeah, all the vulnerabilities are in the private industry. They know what vulnerabilities are, and they cannot share. That's what I was saying. Not only talent, but also they cannot share those things. So we need to have a platform where the private and public, they can share the information. But at the same time, I cannot disclose who I am. And so that's kind of a very critical situation happening everywhere.
Good point.
Thank
and
you.
we'll continue to think about this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ram.
Thank you, sir. We have one over here.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments today. As I was listening to what you were saying, what really struck me was not leaving any voices behind, not millions of people who can be contributing effectively to STEM in the country. One of the voices that I think gets left behind a lot are those of adult learners.
Yes.
who are retraining into cyber positions or computer science positions. My name is Todd Whitaker. I'm from Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio. We're an adult-serving institution.
Yes.
And one of the best ways to learn is through apprenticeships. I've heard a lot about apprenticeships during this.
Yeah.
The problem is that adult learners can't leave jobs that pay the bills that feed their family, that put a roof over their head, to take an apprenticeship position that doesn't?
Yeah.
What about some program for income replacement for those people who want to jumpstart their careers through things like apprenticeships or internships as they are going through college as working adults?
Excellent point, and I cannot agree with you more. In fact, I'll make the point that retooling, upskilling, reskilling is a very, very important thing for us to deploy unbelievable talent that is already in the workforce to be more oriented towards this. And what precludes that is this income challenge. How do I give up my job in order to go and retain myself? I see the value in doing that. So this is a partnership. As you can see, NSF is not the only agency that will be able to do that, or should do that, in fact. So we need to see what we can do in partnership with the Department of Labor, for example, or Department of Commerce, who also have an interest in wanting to make sure that we are keeping the workforce vibrant for the future. So I'll take this back and see how we can talk about this more in a partnership mindset, to see if we can have this retraining as something that we can work with our NSF centers as a mechanism of doing the training, but then the income replacement being an idea that can be a shared responsibility rather than NSF responsibility only.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. And also we need some good industry folks who are willing to do this pro bono for some people too. So I think we are calling into action a lot of goodwill that is there, but how do we channel that? So I hear you as, how do we channel this better around this problem? So it's a good point. Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, sir. So first of all, amazing talk and presentation. Thank you for that. I'm Thayer Hayajne from Fordham University.
Oh.
And at Fordham University, we are leading a SEDI initiative, which is Cybersecurity Education Diversity Initiative.
Yes.
And the goal of that initiative is to help minority-serving institutions establish or improve their existing cybersecurity programs. And based on our discussion with hundreds of those MSIs over the past year and a half, they raised a concern that they feel that they sometimes are excluded from many of the grants and opportunities that are available, especially at the NSF, SFS program, SATC, and other initiatives. And of course, for the reason that they lack the resources that is available in other institutions, their faculty, and they fall behind in all of these resources that are available at other institutions. So what would be your advice or vision to help those minority-serving institutions to narrow that gap between them and other institutions?
Excellent question again. So let me tell you, I didn't talk about all the things that we're trying to do. One other thing when I came to NSF is I was convinced, having come from an institution that has shown that it is possible. We quintupled our research volume in less than a decade. Okay? So it's possible to do that. But what is required is not only great ideas and talent. I'm a firm believer that ideas and talent are democratized and is everywhere. If that is true, and we all agree, if anybody who has a problem with that, talk to me, and I will hopefully convince you otherwise. But the important thing is, how do we take the talent to rise up to the level of NSF projects to get successfully funded to the gold standard merit review process? That's a challenge. Institutions like what I came from, where we built a fantastic infrastructure, if a person had a great idea, we gave them the ability to be able to write a fantastic proposal, reviewed them, hacked it, all internally before it went to the actual agency to get funded. But R2 institutions, if you want to call them R2 institutions, or minority-serving institutions, don't have that infrastructure. So when I came in, I said, this cannot continue. So I'm very proud to say we have just launched, again, 1 year. I came in, I said, we need to get this done. You'll hear about this program. This program is called GRANTED. It's an acronym, Growing Research Access for Nationally Transformative Equity and Diversity. This GRANTED program is a virtual research office that is available to any institution that does not have a research office. The facility to help with proposal development, pre-award, post-award functions, intellectual property, partnership kind of things that these research offices offer. That this office, virtual office, is available for any institution that will be able to take that and put their proposal in the highest quality form that it can then transcend the merit review process and get funded even more than what we are doing right now, focused on those institutions. So I hope that that addresses your question.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Okay, so we are running out of time, so we're
I am literally supposed to go and literally walk into a plane. So we have one last question.
Very quickly, please
Yes.
identify yourself.
Literally,
and
my
question.
car is waiting. I need to go back tonight because I have lots of meetings tomorrow back in Washington. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Owen McNally with the National Cyberwatch Center.
Yes, sir.
Just curious your thoughts on quantum computing. At what point do you think it will impact the cybersecurity education world and training world?
Yeah. So again, a very good question. What I see in quantum right now, in fact, quantum workforce development is something that industry is again telling us that there is already enough quantum industries out there, whether it's quantum networking or quantum computing or quantum sensing and so on. There's enough quantum work that's already going on. Okay? So they are in need of not only workforce that are researchers, but actually community college and technical training talent like the cyber talent. Okay? So that's the first point I want to make. What you're asking is, when will it actually impact what happens in cybersecurity? Already I hear with the machines at 127 qubit that IBM is launching, and they say that one of the major application areas for such qubit machines is in the area of cybersecurity. So I'm expecting that the impact is not tens of decades away, but in this decade, that's what I hear. In this decade, we'll have real impactful quantum computing-based solutions, because this problem of cyber is very akin to quantum-like computing. So as you know, quantum computing is not for everything that you think quantum computers will speed it up, right? There are a certain class of problems that gets accelerated because there's exponential growth of computing power, but that is applicable for a certain class of problems, and cyber-related problems seem to sort of are in the realm of those that can be accelerated by quantum computing. So I'm expecting that within the, I don't make predictions, because if I was, I would buy lottery tickets rather than NSF director. But in terms of what I can tell you is what I'm seeing in the horizon and what I'm hearing about is probably over this decade that we will have a lot of those solutions translating for applications in cyber and others. Hope I answered your question.
Join me in thanking Panch for a fantastic presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm running. I would literally like to spend some time talking to all of you. I'm sorry I have to do this way. So I just got in from an international trip, and then I'm getting out for several meetings, so I apologize for doing this. But please feel free to write to NSF, and we'll make sure that your comments, suggestions, and even questions are addressed. So wonderful meeting all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was a fantastic discussion and presentation. We do have 2 final slides for you and some key notes. For those of you that are staying for the CAE Symposium, the CAE registration starts tonight. You can go there right after this session on the 6th floor. So registration is at the Mixer from 5 to 7 p.m. on the 6th floor for the symposium, and you'll see the agenda there. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors and our partners, especially our local partners, Georgia Cyber Center, Mildred Georgia State University, Spelman College, and of course, all of our industry partners that made NICE 2022 a fantastic success. One final thing, when we hope that you can join us next year in Seattle from June 5th to the 7th, 2023. We look forward to seeing you there, and we look forward to continuing this relationship and seeing the progress that we made over the next year. So finally, thank you, thank you, thank you. Look forward to seeing you next year.